And we're live. 6 minutes late because we had meetings. Heather and I snuck in a workout together. She did her full training. I did a workout. I was trying to stick it to her though. She got me. She got me twice actually. Both AMRAPs. Barely. How many wall walks did you get?
9.
We did a version of the class workout. No, in the end there when we got back to the wall. Did you get off?
1.
1. Okay. Oh, so we tied. Sick.
Did we?
We did.
Oh.
I thought you got more than 1.
No.
We finished at the wall together. We're doing an AMRAP on the same rounds. I got ahead of her a little bit, trying to play the game when she came back to the wall. And one of them, I waited for her and then wall walked.
Well, I knew you were like playing me when we first started because the second set of wall walks, like you got one in ahead and then you just like waited till I came down and then you went.
Yeah.
And then you waited and I was like,
I was playing the game because we were pretty hot. We were moving pretty hot. And then the handstand walk portion, we're getting after it.
Yeah.
But then when we waited, how many reps we got? We suck. We didn't walk very far in the time domain.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't very good to do when you think about it.
Well, we had wall walks.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Handstand push-ups,
we did handstand
walking.
Sure, but we did handstand walks.
Smoked.
And we only did 100 and I did 110 feet. You did 120 feet.
Yeah.
And how many double unders total did we do? 200?
Almost 200, yeah. Or 200, yeah.
In 6 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not very good. Granted, there was a lot of transitions because the way we did it was the way they did at Legends, where we did 10-foot handstand walk, then double unders, 20-foot handstand walk, then double unders, 30-foot, double unders, 40-foot, double unders, and then we were on the 50-foot round. So there's a lot of transitions, but we still suck. That's what we're doing. That's why we're late. Trying to get our fitness in. Fitness first, people. Tardiness second, I guess. What is it? Attendance? I don't know. Anyways.
Well, Cody was happy you trained. He was like, what have you been doing? You were sitting in the office.
Oh, he said, okay, good. You actually trained today. Yeah, because we were talking to athletes. I was doing movement training with one of the athletes on site here, helping her with her mechanics. Showed her how to do basically like a hollow body leg lift in a staller bar position without arching their back. It's pretty good. We got a lot of problems. We're just trying to fix movement around here. All right. Well, also got back from Legends. Really great experience. We had Brian, who finished in 4th. We'll talk about him. He should have finished in 2nd, though, and we'll explain why. Then we had Lauren Cullen, who finished in 8th. Christelle, who finished in 7th, right above Lauren. I should talk about that, too, a little bit. Those two completely different athletes finishing right next to each other in the game. And then Mona finishing in 5th. Good time. CrossFit is not dead. You definitely want to invest in anything CrossFit if you want this to continue. Meaning any organization outside of CrossFit HQ, any organization in CrossFit that you want to help and participate in. It will keep the thing going. Talking to Bob and Joe at Legends, the owners of Legends, talking to Jason, the guy who's Monster Games, helped with Desert City, helps with Legends. He is helping with Will Morad's thing. You got to put your money in all of it. I would argue even in CrossFit, like HQ, even if you don't agree with them, these guys and girls running these organizations, everything else, don't have a lot of cash. I think people think that they're, running these events and driving their Maseratis. They are not. So
yeah,
if you want it to continue and you're an athlete, and even if you're doing a hobby or you come to a CrossFit gym and you want the opportunity to go out to even like a local competition, just like put the dollars and your time and energy there to help everybody. Just want to say that because I think there's a lot of things on the internet that try to convince you otherwise. Like these guys are doing it, especially Legends. These guys are doing it for free. They're just trying not to lose money.
Yeah.
And they're putting on a good show, and it's really cool. Hung out with Scott Panchik a lot. Great dude. Longtime friend, I guess you could say. It's really cool to see somebody go from the games individual into like masters, and especially like a Legends competition like that. And he was there with his wife, who also qualified 35, 39. Just watching him be in there in the groups with people and like see how you can continue competitive exercise and not put out as much time into the gym and training and all of the things that it takes to be in the 18 to 34-year-old division and still have elite level fitness, enjoy yourself and push and have some races. Cause there were guys out there in the 35, 39 that were trying to take his head off. So it
Nice.
creates a cool competition. And so that'll happen as he goes into, the 40, 45, 50, and he gets older, as long as these things keep going. And it's really cool to see. It's similar to like Jason Grubb. People in the Masters divisions know who he is, and he just keeps winning and being great. And I think he gets a lot of enjoyment out of it, just like anybody else. So if you make the gap, Masters is not ever dead. Heather's computer's on. There we go. So the event was cool. The learning piece there as an athlete and working with someone like Brian, who came in and just finished the games, and we are doing a lot of movement work, ring muscle up work, keeping him a little fit, but really like working on the quality of his movement, and then his ability to execute in workouts is where we're at with him. And he's gone down the funnel now of getting back into the sport, getting his feet under him, building his strength back, getting his skills back, everything that he had before when he was competing like 2007, 2008, and then took the time off and then started working with me. And this weekend he was in a position, he was in third in the last workout, 2-part workout. So 100-point scores each. The first portion had toes to bar and dumbbell box step overs, 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on of toes to bar, and then 6 dumbbell box step overs every round after the toes to bar. We knew who he had to stay ahead of and potentially beat to stay in the third place position. So racing from the sideline, I'm telling him where he's at, where he needs to be. I'm giving him signals, and I'm like, you got to go, you got to go. We think everything's good. And they have time on the clock, and they're doing box step overs, him and the other guy. And if I was going to try to pull it up on Instagram, because his girlfriend Ari has it on her Instagram page, and you can see the whole field, and you can see them doing the step overs. And he stops on the opposite side of the box with 3 to 4 seconds left. And you can see on video the other guy step over 1 box step over. In the final event, so the second part 2, Brian gets first place. Because he didn't do that step over that he had time for, and he just gave up or decided not to do it, even though I'm screaming, keep working, moved him from 3rd place into 4th place. Running the numbers, if he did the 1 step over, and because of the point system, and he tied the guy who did the step over, he would have actually been in 2nd place because he got the first in the second half of the workout. Brian wanted me to talk about it because that is a heartbreaking lesson to learn in the moment on the floor. And it's a very easy thing to fix, like low-hanging fruit in training, and to look at, especially when you get down the funnel and you say, hey, I want to compete. And at any level that you're at, it doesn't have to be at the tip top. Like you could be having the same thing happen to you and be 20th place fighting for 18th place or whatever it is. Because in training, he was like, looking back when I'm training and there's 3 seconds left on the clock, I kind of stop in my training. Or I like, okay, because you're training. Well, it's like, all right, man, now we got to play to the end. Like every day you train, play to the end. Every second.
In this past week's Send It workout, I was just right there with CJ, just giving her more support than anything. And she finished her 6th round and she had a little bit of time. So she's accumulating toes to bar, right? And she essentially was blown up at that point. She was redlined, but the end's in sight of the 9-minute AMRAP portion of it. And she did like 5, 2, 3, and comes down, and she hit the ground at like 55 seconds, like 8:55. And I said, jump up, do 1 more. And she just stopped.
Yeah.
And that's
the moment,
that's
right?
a normal thing. But I said, if that was a qualifier, that you had time for 1 more. Because like after, it was all said and done, we circled back and I said that. I was like, the only areas you fell short was she missed a clean that she shouldn't have. She literally just like reset, pulled it again and made it. She just stubbed her toe in 1 lift. And I was like, the only other area of improvement of what you just did was you had time to jump for 1 more.
Yeah. And like
we all can do it.
And I feel like that's probably more people than not too.
Correct.
Even
at all levels, all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just something to be aware of, right? So like if he had that habit early on, it would not have been a problem this weekend. You know, and he's going to go back and fix that. And his ability, the best part is his ability to one say, hey, I want to make a change. And when he came off the floor, I was able to give him that feedback right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is so humble and so kind and so hungry to be the best that he does not care about. He could have came out. There was one where I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Because he was asking the judge like how many double unders he had left. And I was like yelling at him, stop asking just jump on the rope. Stop fucking asking the judge. It doesn't matter. He'll put his hand up and you're going to run across. And like, he's in a race with people. And he's like, how many? I'm like, Brian, shut the fuck up. I was just like getting crazy because he needed to. And he comes off the floor and he's like, he's not upset by that. He's like, that was the right call. I should not have been doing that. I was tired and I didn't know where I was. And you're right. Like, and he wants to be better. And he knows that I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be a dickhead to him. I'm saying that because I want the same thing he wants. He wants to come across the line first. So I'm doing the best I can to refocus and resettle himself. And I was just like, just jump. Like that's the clear, direct cue for him to do something. Cause I'm like, stop talking to the judge. Just keep jumping till you're done. And then it's just keep jumping till you're done. That's all I'm like screaming. So like, it's, you know, it's not like I'm like just saying weird stuff. Like I'm giving him an actionable to do so he can go and get off the floor. He takes that feedback, he applies it, and he's like crushing it. And then he goes ahead and wins the next event because he's like frustrated, which is good. But you have to be at that level in that moment. He's had so many other layers to have that opportunity for me to yell at him like that and take the feedback and build and grow. And his goal of being the best in the world outweighs his uncomfortableness of taking feedback. And he wants everybody to know that. That's why I'm like bringing it up. He's like, you better talk about this on the podcast. Like everyone needs to know this. Like, I don't ever want to do this again. And I don't think anybody else should. And like, they shouldn't be okay with that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Hey, we're on the same page. I love this. Like trying to help people. Cause like to Harley's point, it is something very easy to do. You can play to the end. You can take really good feedback and you can push yourself forward to get what you want, or you can go the opposite end. Because the more time she shakes that off, like Harley's saying about CJ, the harder it's going to be to do it. Like it's talking like stacking bricks. I think Marissa was talking about stacking bricks recently, but like every time she doesn't stack that brick, she's going to be like, where's the house? You know, it's like, well, I was there training while I was doing the thing. It's like, yeah. But you never put the next brick on because you didn't do that one rep that Harley's telling you to do. Right. Brian didn't finish that dumbbell box step over. And like, there's no brick there. Like the house is the same house as it was when you went in the gym because you missed the opportunity to put the brick on. And that's really hard to see. And like, that's where like coaching really comes into play and where taking the feedback comes into play. Cause we're very good at seeing like, oh, you missed that brick.
Yeah.
I think athletes are worse at seeing where the brick goes or if there's the brick opportunity though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that to your point, Brian is incredibly humble and wants to learn and wants to take feedback. I would say the same thing about Jace. And I would say that same thing about Celine and CJ and a lot of these very high level people that have a lot of potential. And if you look at other people, other sports, the best people aren't getting defensive with the feedback. They're taking it neutrally and they're trying to learn from it.
Yeah. And process it too. Like there's a lot of feedback in a lot of areas with all the athletes that I worked with this weekend that they all either had a resolve around feedback and like, I get it now, I understand. Or they're like, you know what, I need more of this because I know that I have this far to go and I can close that gap and I want to. And it's good to do competition like that and enter it with that process because none of them really had any win or lose realistically. It's in the winter, they're having a good time, they qualify, they're using their fitness, they're trying to out there race, compete and see what they're made of, and they're going to retool and bring it back. And the whole purpose was to see where we can improve and things we can work on. And with that, they're not out there stressing about like, oh, this is going to define me and I need to get fifth place or first place, third place, or whatever, because my self-worth and value is all tied up into the outcome of this this competition. It's not like that. Like they're out there, like they want to do well, but if they do bad, if they get last place, they're going to walk away. As long as they got a ton of good learning lessons, it's going to be good. See what Mercedes say. I think a lot of the rooted in understanding that your coach is 100% in your corner and that where any feedback is coming from. Yeah, we're on your team. Like we're your number one advocate, every single one of us. Like we wouldn't coach you if we weren't. Because like if I can't get behind somebody, I'm not gonna coach them. Like that would be stupid for me to do.
Right. And I mean, coaching is not a one-time conversation either. Like you've probably had similar conversations about mindset, perspective, and learning from, with Brian or with CJ before. And like we've talked about good, productive books and listenings and readings that you can develop and cultivate this sort of growth mindset and be aware of it. Like, how do you learn? How do you get better? And it's not a passive endeavor. Like you have to be actively involved in taking that feedback and taking it back to your sessions and applying it. Like if Brian goes home and changes nothing, that house stays the same to the brick analogy.
Look at him. Exactly. That's why we have coaches. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
He's going to make a change today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a really valuable lesson that any athlete at any level can learn from. And it's low hanging fruit. It really is. The hardest part about it is feeling like, inside when someone says those words to you. Cause like CJ probably hears this. She did nothing wrong. It's okay that she didn't do that rep. It's okay that we're talking about it. And it's okay that she listens and learns from it. Right. That's where you got to live. It may not feel great. It's like, oh shit, you put me on blast, and there's a bunch of people just like John saying, be careful because she knows where you sleep, Harley. But like that type of stuff is like, it's neutral. It's normal. It's what's going to make you better. And if we continue to hide from it or have shame around it, we're not going to get better. You're not. And you're not going to get
the only reason you have shame is ego, right? Like your perception of like you either already know best or you believe that you are truly trying your best. And I think that most of us are trying really hard to be better and get better. That's why we dedicate ourselves to training and the time in the gym and such. But what happens between the ears is really a powerful endeavor. Like there was a quote yesterday I posted.
Wait,
it was
I have a real quick question. Raise of hands. How many of you guys go into the gym and are actively not trying to get better, no matter the energy level that you have? No, none of us. You might.
That's not true.
No, Harley's joking. He's just joking. I know he's joking. But like you might have 10% effort that day, but you're not trying to get better. You're like all of us for sure. I know you guys, and we go in like I got 10%, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to improve something, and maybe that day it's just the consistency of it. But yeah, so like that's what's crazy too, is because people are like, I'm giving my effort, I'm giving blah, blah, blah. Like, how could you give me this feedback? It's like, that's not what's in question. I know you're giving effort.
Right.
So like, that's what Harley's saying. It's like, we know you're giving effort. That's not what we're talking about. But yes, people use it as a defense mechanism because their ego, and they're like, how could you question my effort? Like, I'm not questioning.
I posted a quote yesterday. It was something like, you cannot learn what you think you already know.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to accept the externals.
Yeah. The other thing I got from this weekend, and I think the other athletes got, other than like learning from Brian's mistake of just being more intentional, setting up like if you're competing, so there's like layers to this. So if you're starting out and you want to get to an in-person competition, you need to learn how to do the qualifiers. So look at qualifiers, look at old qualifiers, look at floor plans. If there are no floor plans, in a qualifier, start setting up your training in your mixed modal conditioning pieces the most optimal way that you can like basically reach down and grab your jump rope, set that down, grab the handle of a rower, like where you're almost like right on top of yourself. So then you have no transition, so you can optimize your score and like learn how to do that, because that's a skill in itself. If you're like Brian, which we talked about, we're going to take like 50% of his training, Metcons, and line it up from the pull-up bar down. However, we're going to do that the same way they'd make a lane at a competition. Everything's going to be 5 to 10 feet apart, and we're going to learn how to transition in your work, right? So there's like layers to where you're at, and you got to figure out the game that you're playing so you can apply that in your training and just work on some of those easy things, because it's low-hanging fruit to learn how to, like, what did I do when we handstand walk down on the first round, Heather?
We started on the opposite side so that when we came back, the jump rope was.
Yeah, but then when we came back the other way, we went down the 20 feet. What did I do?
I don't remember.
I jogged back to my rope.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The little stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
it's training. I don't need to jog back to my rope. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I do. What does jogging back to my rope do? Well, it forces me to go a little faster. It makes me work a little harder. It doesn't give me any rest from the handstand walk into the double unders. But when I do that, when I want it to be there, it will be there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even that one wall walk that I got today, it's like I finished the crossover drag rope. I think I had, it was at 52 seconds. So I had 8 seconds and I was like, okay, I'm going to run to the wall and do the one, and I think that like, that's like the mindset, because I could have easily just been like, 8 seconds. I don't know if I'll have time to do that. Right.
Yeah. So that's like the first learning is like setting things up within where you're at in your development. So qualifier, or you're an in-person competitor who knows that they can qualify. Because in Brian's case, he knows he's going to qualify through qualifiers. He needs to work on the skill of competing in person. And then little stuff of like finishing workouts, being more urgent in your transitions. Those are easy things to pick up. No problem. And that's another thing that you watch some of the best in each group do. And like, it's crazy. I always think about this, but in masters, I think it's more stark. Like you can definitely tell the difference when the first heat 1 goes versus like heat 2. If there's only 2 heats, like if there's 30 athletes, because they go 15 at a time. If there's 3 heats, there's the contrasting difference between heat 2 and heat 3. So the final heat is heat 3. If you guys don't know, a competition goes heat 1, heat 2, heat 3. Heat 3 is the best heat. Heat 1 is the first heat, or the worser athletes at the bottom of the leaderboard. But when they switch, oh my God. Because as a coach, you warm somebody up, they take the corral. You typically are going to watch the heat before your heat that's going. And in my fortunate position, I get to watch the top heats because that's where my athletes are competing in. And watching the first heat and then seeing my athletes compete in the second, it is night and day different in the speed of travel, transitions, their desire. And like some of that stuff is not even, it's not even a coach, like it's not a program design thing. Right. It's a coach thing. And I think we do a very good job of trying to have these conversations and like circling back to the resistance or taking it in pretty quick. And being okay with feedback. Like that's how some of those athletes get really good, really fast, is because they're understanding that there's a difference there. And sometimes there's a fitness limitation and we can fix that pretty easily through program design and that kind of stuff, and energy system training or strength development, whatever it is. But the stuff we can't really fix that just happens through conversation and is pretty like nebulous is this kind of stuff. Hold on. We'll see what, stop reading the comments, Harley. We'll get to the comments.
He's just dying.
I can just see him read. That's the rule. You can't read the comments. It gets everyone sidetracked. But that's the biggest picture is like a low hanging fruit. You can figure out how to cut those things. And even if you're like a low level athlete, I would argue you could take yourself a first heat athlete into the second heat athlete just by applying what I'm saying, learning how the workout floors are laid out and laying that out. Like if you're able to get to in-person competitions, as you get prepped for these competitions, you lay out the workout floor the way it would happen, or you perceive it to happen, or you've seen it historically. You put pieces of equipment where you think they would go. You get better at taking weights on and off your bar with clips. You buy special clips that are the hardest clips to take off and put on, because at the CrossFit Games, everybody complained about those clips. Get a pair of those clips, train with the clips, learn how to take them on and off. You now just 10x yourself over somebody else who does not do those things. There's so many little things that you can do that I watched this weekend that, because of the fitness disparity and the desire, are greatly apparent, because you start seeing these transitions be slower and sloppier and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just like, wow, you could just fix that, this, that. And that has nothing to do with
your fitness.
Yeah. Your fitness. You got to row a little harder. You got to, no. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
You're just leaking energy.
Well, I think there's so many athletes that like don't even have that awareness. Like they're just in there doing reps, doing work. And like, they don't know that the people that are in the second and the third heat are like literally training and doing those things. And I think like just becoming an athlete that is aware of that and starting to think about that and having more awareness around what you're doing in the gym besides just like doing work to do work.
Right. And it's okay to do that if that's not like your goal isn't to improve in a competitive manner. This is isolated to like, well, you know what? No, you get a value of doing that, because at fitness wise, you're going to turn over energy faster. If you force transitions and you force working out, you're going to get fitter. It's going to help your health.
Well, I just mean like,
so no, I just want to backpedal.
Yeah.
It's not just for elite athletes.
Yeah. I'm just saying people that just want to be better or want to compete at any level.
Well, not even, I'm just saying I just backpedaled.
Yeah.
Competing
Yeah.
and not competing.
Yeah.
You're going to get a value from taking this approach.
Yeah.
Health wise.
Yep.
Because you'll be able to do more reps, more capacity. You're going to force stuff. You're put more load on your body. Like that's all good stuff. But yes, Heather, you will become a better competitor.
I agree with you, Todd. I think that within GPP, if you can get more work done in less time or the same time, then you just increase your work capacity. You increase the stimulus being placed on system, etc. So transitions, pacing, strategic, disciplined breaks, awareness of you, yourself, and your pace, that benefits everyone in the space. If for those who want to be competitive, awareness of what the workout is, like you said, past workout flows, even getting creative of like whenever, Legends put out what the movements were, but didn't give you any workouts, like that was last week or whatever. Having the creativity of being like, all right, well, what could this be? How could the floor and flow be set up? And actually training that, visualizing it, and playing the mental side of it, that will help you prepare because you've already been there within yourself, right? Like,
yeah,
don't want to be too, outside of actual tactical quantifiable practice.
I'm gonna pat myself on the back because prepping, I know their bias, the Legends bias, and I'm very good at predicting and like giving a lot of the movements and the combinations. And I know that the 4 people who compete this weekend would agree. And that's why I get so irritated with prep when they deviate from my plan of what I'm doing. Because I have the experience. Yeah, the athletes. Because to Harley's point, like if you get coached by me and we're in these settings, I know it. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I'm gonna say I'm gonna be 80 to 90% correct in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, especially in the masters categories. And you don't even have to do that work that Harley's saying. You just listen to me. I'm gonna set you up, And like if you don't have a coach like that, like what Harley's saying is like you need to do that stuff yourself. So if you don't want to do that stuff, then you can hire us as coaches and we'll help you do that and set you up for the prep. Now, if you do get coached by me, this is me just venting, and you don't do what I'm telling you to do for prep, I'm really upset with you. So don't do anything that I don't tell you to do 2 to 3 weeks out from a competition, please. You're going to mess it all up. All right. I'm taking too much time and energy. I care about you too much. Don't do it. Look, it was hell yeah. Always thinking he knows the workouts. Yeah. He does.
So it's always a fun moment.
Like, how did you know? How did you know the workouts?
Hearing that is always a fun, part of the game. Is like as a coach and who's been around or practiced and done a lot of comps, tried our best.
Yeah.
Like I think it's always fun whenever athletes are like, I swear to God, you knew the workouts. And it's like, no, we just know the traditional and common like combinations and trends, right? Like to your point, like Legends is really easy because they are so rooted into their habits.
Yeah.
Like it's actually really
wild.
easy.
Yeah.
Now they're going to hear this and then they're like, you guys got to stop. They know.
They know.
Yeah.
But like other things, right? Like I coached a DTC member up until a local comp, and everything that came out of this local comp, it was ran by someone who's been to semis the last 3 years. I was like, I think he has a pretty good pulse on CrossFit in the space, and everything that she had been doing basically got tested. And I was like, sweet, except for handstand push-ups because she had a shoulder issue, so we pulled back from that. But it is what it is, and it's always fun.
Yeah, but like if you don't have that, you're gonna have to figure that out on your own.
Preach, Brian. Yeah. Preach. He's a believer.
You should have just had Brian on the podcast.
I mean, we could have had him on. Anyways, those were the few things. Is like there's racing happening. You got to learn how to do that. You do that in your gym. Low hanging fruit. CJ's example is great. Setting things up, getting better preps, understanding the competition and the game that you're playing is super helpful as well. And then getting a good coach and listening to the coach. Like this weekend,
understanding yourself, reflection, look intrinsically, what's actually going to push you to that next level within your mind, like, and understanding again what the game entails, what the sport demands,
and
how you respond to that.
And like at some events, I feel sometimes I'm like, man, dude, I'm worthless. I don't even need to be here. I suck as a coach. And like, just that's like sometimes how I feel. But this time I was like, no, looking around and watching the number of athletes who didn't have a coach there, the coaches that were there for athletes. And then even, I talked to Lowell a little bit, and having you as a coach, Harley, was something that like, he's like, no, that's huge value. And a lot of the guys, he's 60 to 64 years old, and these people have coaches. So like, even though the coach wasn't there, when I started talking to a lot of these masters athletes, like almost every single one of them has an individual coach in some capacity, or a coach at their gym that's working with them. And maybe they're following like Boulder athlete, but there's somebody there in their gym with them working, or they're working with a coach who's like using another program because that's the program they like or whatever it is. But like, no one's really out there on a blog at the top, in the top 10 of every group. There are other people are like, unfortunately, like there are people, and I don't know, I didn't talk to enough of them to know, like, how do you feel about this? Like this competition, like, how do you feel you're doing? And not everybody can be at the top, but if everybody got a one-on-one coach, how much more competitive would it be?
Yeah. But
Which would be sick.
Also, to your point though, like the people that don't have the one-on-one coaches are not having these conversations. They're not having the conversations about transition and setup and doing the extra rep and all these things that we're trying to have with our own athletes to push the needle forward or get them into those top groups. So I think like not having a coach, you're missing out on those conversations and the things that other athletes are doing that you maybe don't realize.
Yeah, it was neat. And then the last thing is movement quality. Obviously, as masters, like the better you move, the more at the top of the field you're going to be, hands down, in every division, from mobility and mechanics to just movement economy. So like overhead positioning, or their jerks, or their hang snatches that they had to do, or their handstand push-ups, like those movements specifically were much easier on the people that had picture perfect, whatever you want. Well, there is a picture perfect movement, right? Straight arms, no bent elbows, no internally rotated shoulders. They got good, strong, straight up and down midlines on like handstand push-ups. They're not sagging all over, flaying all over. The legs aren't flying out to the sides. Like, doesn't look wild. They're rowing mechanics. Like, just because that first workout was how many calories on the rower you got, how you row was very beneficial. And like, can you change the way you row to row better and more powerful, and like do something weird if you need to get the chain longer for more calories because you didn't have much time? Like, having that agility in the movement, but still maintaining best technique, was allowing a lot of these people to excel. The sandbag workout, how you can hold the sandbag on their shoulder. Like, there are people changing like the way they're doing it because the way that they're told the standard is. The people who couldn't figure it out because they've only done it one way in their training, clearly, and they can't make the adjustment.
In the sandbag workout, were they able to put it behind their head? I feel like every photo was on like the shoulder.
Well, because for the men especially, like it was deemed on the shoulder because it's in front, and some of it's in front, and you could see their shoulder, which is what the judges were looking for. So like that couldn't be completely off the shoulder. So like behind the shoulder, there had to be in front, quote unquote, in front of the shoulder, and you had to be able to see the shoulder. So like Mona, when it was coming down on her, and I have like that photo of her, they were going to stop her, but it was like on the way in the last one, and she drops it and goes for the run. So she got away with it. But like the head judge was coming over
on the
carry portion. And I mean, the squat was not a lot of people were doing anything weird on the squat. It was more on the carry portion.
They had to hold it in front of their shoulder for the carry.
Well, so like if you had to split the sandbag.
Yeah.
So some of it's going to be on the back.
It had to be on top of the shoulder, not behind the head.
Got it.
Yeah. So there,
or in front of you.
Yeah. So there was people that were, skirting the line, but the judges were doing the best they could to get on that. But like, again, when you were told the standard in the warm-up area, you see all these people trying to figure it out, and so the people who could make those changes and have agility there and move better did better. The people who had no problem with the heavier drag rope, which I bought one, they are much heavier. They are a different feel, even though they don't look it. I think they're a very different feel. The people that on their single unders jump this high, like just, an inch to 2 inches off the ground, Then when they got to the second round and the crossovers, they had to jump a little higher because they're doing crossovers and no longer singles, jumped 2.5 to 3 inches off the ground. And then for the double unders, they were jumping 3 to 4 inches off the ground. And every time they came back to the rope, they increased their jump relative to the difficulty of versus the people who came out and their jump was 4 to 5 inches off the ground every single jump, no matter what movement of the jump rope they were doing. And that's very fatiguing. You know, the person has economy in their jump and control of that jump rope. And we watched Scott Panchik do it. It was wild to watch because, you know, he's in a field of people and he's ahead and like people are trying to hunt him down on the wall balls, even though he's going unbroken. Like it's wild to watch him change his jump so in control perfectly. Like you could have went out there with like a ruler and been like, all right, Scott, jump 2 inches off the ground. He's going to jump exactly 2 inches off the ground. Okay, Scott, now jump 6 inches off the ground. He'll jump 6 inches exactly off the ground every jump. He's in such control of his body and his jump mechanics that efficiency is what is pushing him forward so much more than everybody else. And he's not leaking any energy. Oh yeah. Because Brian watched it. I was pointing out to him. He's like 100% the same every time. Same thing with his burpees. His burpee mechanics. Wow. I was like, oh man, and you don't notice it. You do notice it. Like now I'm talking about, you could go back and watch the CrossFit Games and watch a lot of these elite athletes do it. But you notice it more when it's Scott against the field of these, I don't want to say jabrones because they're very fucking fit, but
they're just not Scott Panchik.
They're not Scott Panchik. They're not a 11 times games athlete.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, you move like doo-doo. Like all of you guys out there are like amateurs relative to what he's doing movement wise. And it's like, oh, and Scott and I talked about it. He's like, yeah, if some of these guys just clean up how they move, they'd be able to give me a run for their money. But because they're just out there doing whatever, it's like, oh, it's easy. I'll take you down just by moving better. You know, he's also super fit and he's Scott Panchik. I understand that, but it is interesting to watch and see. And like same thing as wall ball mechanics were the same every time. He's not a tall guy. He's like as tall as Heather. So like anybody who's like out here being like, oh, I got to jump to the wall ball. I'm like, talk to Scott.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there and like just everything watching him. It was cool to get to watch some of those events because of the way I had the other masters in the 40 groups and the way they set up who went, because he just went after the ladies and I got to watch. So it was nice to see, but watching the mechanics of things and like even in the box step overs, the curtsy step up, step down was more efficient for people who could do it and not get fumbled on their stepping, toes to bar, chest to bar, the efficiencies there, like how they're doing the movements. Like obviously you got to get to a point where you can do the sets unbroken, but how they're doing those mechanically through each rep and through fatigue. And we talk about it all the time. Like CrossFit said this forever. Like mechanics and consistency, and intensity or whatever, MCI. You just don't really notice it. Like you watch a group of a GPP class or you watch like high level athletes, but you don't watch like the Scott Panchik in a room with other people. You don't really notice it until you notice it. So it's cool to see. And I'm going to hit that home with a lot of people. Like we're just going to move better and you're going to get annoyed by how much I'm going to tell you that is poor movement. We need to change that.
Do the common uncommonly well.
Yeah. He's doing it. He's winning. He was laughing, having a good time, joking.
While doing wall balls.
Yeah. It was
simultaneously. He's like, you guys having fun down there?
Yeah, basically.
Looking down the lane.
But yeah, it was cool. It was good learnings. It's interesting too, because I watch a lot of CrossFit. I enjoy, obviously, everybody knows I love CrossFit. So does my wife. We watch a lot of CrossFit, but we're not watching it for entertainment. We're like literally watching like film, like you would in college athletics or like professional athletics. So we do enjoy it, but we're like, oh, look at that person. Oh, it took them 12 seconds to do those handstand walks. And we're like collecting data and information and having a good time with it. Like we really enjoy that. I don't expect everyone to do things that way, but like it was cool because I do that when the other athletes, the other masters were watching Scott. It gave me an opportunity to kind of train their eye a little bit and be like, oh, look at what Scott's doing here. Look at what they're doing there. Look at the difference between that. Look how fast he's going here, which I think helped them a lot just to see it and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That helps
I mean,
them.
just observe, right? Like I talk about being a student of the game a lot. Like I say that all the time. And I think that we all could, most athletes can do a better job of that and like truly analyzing what the best in the space are doing. And exactly like Marissa just brought up Rich Froning. I still have this video clip in my mind of Rich.
So I watched that too. So,
Yeah, I saw that. But what I was going to say about Rich is that I still have this video in my mind of him doing light power snatches at like 75 pounds in what would have been like the team series back in the day. And he just the most efficient turnover, hit lockout and come back down. Like there was no wasted energy. It made it look effortless and smooth. But you're talking about Scott doing that in everything. And if you're talking about Rich being one of the best movers in the space, he's doing it in everything. Mm-hmm. If you can emulate the best in the game, learn techniques, learn movement quality, versatility, and how you do different skills, that's how you level up your fitness. And it's not the fitness from a base capacity standpoint, but it's your ability to express that capacity.
Right.
Because poor movement limits you.
Right. And sometimes it can unlock fitness that you already had. You just couldn't call on it. Because you were locked up in an overhead position or your hips, or like you just were doing burpees and your feet are coming off the ground at the bottom of the burpee and you have like no tension and you don't know pop up out of the ground. Like you're just like little noodle. Mm-hmm. Happens all the time. Don't do that.
All right. We're going to talk about strength, or we'll talk about strength. About best in the sport.
Hey man, I just want people to take it. You could take these little things, apply it to yourself, and you too could have excellence. Okay. I sound like Ben
Bergeron.
I know. Jeez. Anyway, strength. Okay. 40 minutes in. I hope you guys learned a lot. Now we're going to just talk about some strength methods and training. Briefly go over it, hopefully add some value, because strength first, right? If you are not strong enough to play the game or at whatever level that is you're looking for, whether that's in CrossFit or sport, you want to start with strength first. Mark Ripito. He's not wrong. Once you're strong enough, then yeah, obviously you look at other characteristics, but in a strength sport, you're definitely going to do it. Because it's even like you look at high rocks, there's an argument to be made there, especially, and Hunter McIntyre, I think, would agree with this, from losing last year and then his changes this year, and now he's getting better. He went back to strength training to improve his strength and not worried about getting lighter and faster. His runs were already good. He came from a running background. Strength, number one. I think that was true in most things. So because of that, let's talk about some strength training methods. These guys have some prepared. Just so we're clear, strength is application of force on an external object. And that expression is what strength is. So your ability to move a load or move a load quickly. Any other examples? That's like the bare basic of it. There's a lot more there, but that's give the spark.
Would you argue that external load can be your own body weight?
Yeah, let's not get into that though.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, because one of my examples is directly involving coordinating your system. So yes. I think
I just didn't want to get too far down the rabbit hole on a general definition, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. Load can be external or body weight depending on how you're applying the force.
Yeah.
It's application of force is what we're looking for.
Yeah. Cool. Typically people will use it on like other objects. Like if you're not a CrossFitter or a gymnast or a bodyweight calisthenic person, like if you're just in the powerlifting world, they're going to apply it to external loads. So let's just go with that. But yes, your body weight and moving your body through space is an expression of strength. Or yes, because it's backed up by strength training. And the stronger you are, the higher you jump. It's proven. Anyways, Tyler, you want to go first? I think you got a couple good ones.
Yeah. So the two I want to talk about, they're for the same reason. The first one is wave loads. And that's just easiest way to explain it is to just give like an example of a set. So like wave load session would be if you're back squatting and you could do this by adding reps or by adding weight. So A way to add volume through a wave load would be you do a set of 5 at a certain weight, and then you did a set of 3 at a heavier weight, and then you do a set of 1 at a heavier weight than the 3. And then you can come back through, and instead of going 5-3-1, you can go 7-5-3. So at the same weights that you did the 5-3-1. So that way you're adding volume that way. You can add intensity by, so say we go 5-3-1 again, you do another set or block of 5-3-1, but your second set of 5 is heavier than your first set of 5. Your second set of 3 is heavier than your first set of 3, and your 1 is heavier than your first set of 1. And I chose those, or that one, because it, as a person, so like I have low neuromuscular efficiency. So wave loads actually help me prime my central nervous system to be able to move heavier weight better.
Yeah, quickly tell people what neuromuscular efficiency is.
So having high neuromuscular efficiency, if you are a powerful person or you are a naturally strong person, you most likely have a high neuromuscular efficiency, meaning your brain sends good enough signals to your muscles to get a full hard contraction to apply force. I don't have that. So my neuromuscular efficiency isn't super high. So my body's potential to actually apply force, I don't come as close to actually hitting that potential as I could. So my wave loads they've always worked well for me. And even like I PR in EMOMs a lot for the same reason of just keeping that central nervous system firing and priming it as I go. So that's the one the one I wanted to talk about. I had another one which I can come back to, but
yeah, I think that's a good explanation and something that people should understand. So like using that tool to train people who are low muscular efficiency are also enduring, typically. So like forcing them to fatigue the system or run out of their juices of endurance will then force central nervous system recruitment adaptation. So using a wave system like that is very beneficial for people to build that, like you're talking. And that's just a simple, easy way to do it. And like there's no other magic behind that, right? So like if you identified yourself as that through assessment, you could apply that strength protocol, retest, and build. What would be some like applications or utilizations of that, or any more explanation? And Harley, if you want to jump in to say something before that, go ahead.
How would you use it?
Yeah. So you got somebody. Yeah. Like, what are you looking at the end of the day, other than getting more neuromuscular efficient? What would be like progress or growth? Like giving an example, like a case study, or just
so like if we run, I mean, we could do it a couple ways of like you run the same wave load for a couple of weeks. So like maybe go 5-3-1 for 2 or 3 blocks for weeks, and the weights go up each week. Or you even do, so like the first week's maybe 5-3-1, and the next week is 6-4-2 at the same weights as the 5-3-1, and they're able to hit it. Or even just having like their own feedback of like, last week that one sucked. This week it moved a lot better, or it moved a lot faster, you know? So those are ways of like noting progress or seeing if it's working.
Perfect. I only ask that because I think athletes who are listening to it won't see, they want to see the weight on the bar go up. That can be one way. But when we're trying to build neuromuscular efficiency, because we don't have you strapped up to EMG readers and going, oh, you're activating 10 muscle fibers now, and before you were activating 7. Like, you can do that if you want to spend the money and you want to use those machines because they're readily available for people now. And Tyler could put you through a protocol and track that growth. But using hey, this 135 barbell got easier for 5 reps this week than it was last week. And you see the adaptation of like things that were, and you accommodate yourself to that load, then you're increasing those connections and those neural connections. So like that's a way that you can see that it's getting better. It may not be, it might just be like, you're doing it and you weren't doing it before, But with the people that we work with and people come in, let's say 3 to 5 days a week, it probably is neuromuscular growth more than so than just general exposure. And that's true for a lot of things. Like you having a conversation with a coach just yesterday about like what is adaptation from general exposure and what is actual coaching and program design that is creating specific adaptation for desired end result. And the hard thing is like we're going back and forth and we're talking about it. And it's like 99% of things that you do are going to create an adaptation, but 100% of the things you do that don't have a specific end goal or some thought process behind it will not create specific adaptation. So you're literally like going back and forth. And that's why we're having this conversation of like, who would need this? Why? How does it look? So cool. That's wave loads. It's a way to do it. You could also use wave loads for snatch consistency or clean and jerk consistency, or the sport application, because we do have wave, drop set loading or increased loading, ladder loading in the sport. So it can be a sport application. But prior to that type of training, I think you should look at what Tyler's talking about and increase your neuromuscular efficiency, or look for indicators and markers of increasing neuromuscular efficiency. So then you can do the test stuff.
So I really like wave loading in a peaking cycle. So because it is very neural driven, so it's you're refining your ability to produce force in a fast way. It's due to potential potentiation. So the going from the 5 to 3 to the 1 on set 1, ideally weights you're very successful in. After feeling that heaviest weight of wave 1, you're then going back to the 5 in increasing intensity example that Tyler gave. Your system is then primed from the 1. So then maybe that 5 feels a little easier because it's ready and to produce more force for that heavier loading. So I like to use that type of loading in a peaking cycle, because generally speaking, peaking for strength and top end weights is refining that neural production of force and recruiting muscle fibers. So I will use that 5-3-1 example for maybe 3 weeks out from the peak. Then I'll go down to 3-2-1s. And then maybe I'll even go to an example would be 3 sets of 3 for my first wave, 3 sets of 2 for my second wave, and 3 singles building by feel for my last wave, as an opportunity to feel a really heavy weight, but also refining the ability to recruit, the musculature involved and the system involved.
Yeah. It can also prep you for complex loads, like complex barbell tests, because you're doing 5 reps. I mean, depends on how you're doing them. If you're doing them singles, probably not. But like if you're doing 5
touch and go,
however the parameters are, it could be 2 birds, 1 stone situation.
I mean, you can get a lot out of barbell repeatability or barbell cycling, right? Like, I think that in the sport we do so many lifts at a moderately heavy weight in a mixed setting that touch and go doesn't matter as long as you're following the bar down in a very disciplined, fast manner. Drop singles is the way to go in a mixed setting. So if you're just trying to expose yourself to more repetitions at a wide variety of loads, it may give someone a lot of confidence just from that exposure.
Yeah. They will lose the eccentric strength building properties, but
correct.
What's interesting is you guys just described wave loading, and wave loading or wave training actually is a testing protocol in the testing body of CrossFit, which is crazy. A training structure to get you better, neuromuscularly efficient, and express absolute strength or power or speed with an external object. They use that to test how fit you are, but we can also use that to train, which it came before the testing. So like before CrossFit, wave loading has been around with the Soviets and everybody else way before CrossFit ever came around. And it's crazy to think about, because like I think that's where a disconnect does happen in a lot of these protocols and methods, is that because you've seen it only in CrossFit and you've only seen it under fatigue and in a testing situation scenario of fitness, that when we give it to you for training, it gets disconnected and interrupted, and you don't understand. Because even the clean races at the games was a wave scenario. That was a wave strength training session that they did out on the floor. Now, did those athletes get stronger from that session? A little bit, but really they weren't. They were seeing if they could express neuromuscular efficiency in that scenario under the test against their peers.
Yep.
But when you're training, that may not, like, unless you're peaking for a competition, that may not be your mindset. Your mindset should be in improving technique, the loading or intensity, as you guys are saying, which, because intensity is time, load, and speed. But so like, that's really crazy to me when I think about it outside of CrossFit, when you take off the CrossFit hat, that like you look at that and that's a training protocol to make people better used by Olympic weightlifters that has now become a test of your strength endurance, basically. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't get them confused though. Because I think some athletes will go in and they'll do that wave and they'll do it wrong, or they'll do it for time, or like, and you could do it for time, but like you'll miss the opportunity. Like in Harley's example, if you're going 5 at 185, 3 at 205, 1 at 225, then the wave starts at 205 for 5, and then 225 for 3, and then 245 for 1, and then you do it again. Like that looks like a test. That looks like CrossFit for time. But if you don't take the appropriate amount of rest, you don't approach it the right way, those loading parameters are not correct for you. You're, to Tyler, what he's explaining is you're not going to get the actual neuromuscular efficiency and the repeatability that you're looking for to adapt yourself specifically to be better at the end test.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because you could just come in and test yourself. And yes, you will get better because the exposure of those, the 531 or the 753 or 975, whatever. Do Amanda. You could do Amanda a bunch of times and you would get better, but you wouldn't get that much better unless you're like dialing back and using a strength principle and a strength method outside of CrossFit dum-dum.
You know what the wave loading example that just came to my mind, talking about Rich Froning, Fantasyland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wave conditioning workout, except for it's just continuous in nature.
Right. So that's where like it's tough as coaches in CrossFit, especially like we're using these things that show up as tests, show up as workouts, show up as whatever. And they are methods and principles from strength and conditioning that if we use them a different way and approach it a different way, could create really favorable adaptations that would bleed into your CrossFit training, which is why I always argue you don't have to do CrossFit to get better at CrossFit. You do need to do some CrossFit, but you don't need to do a whole lot. So that was a good one. I like that. Wave was good. Good job, Tyler. Anybody like wave loading? Raise your hand in the comments. All right. Who's got one?
Do you want me to
go, Heather? Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the one I was going to say that I like to use on a lot of my athletes is cluster sets. So one of the things that I have a lot of my athletes that are trying to work on strength is I have them build to a heavy single for the day. And then they do a drop set of clusters. So usually I usually have them start at like say 70%, 65, 70%, and they'll do maybe 3 to 4 or 5, maybe singles. So in those singles, they'll have like a 20 or 30 second rest, like in between. And then they'll do multiple sets of that. So the idea of that is that they're getting more volume in higher percentage work. So that they're not, but if they're doing like, I don't know, I guess use back squat as an example, right? They can't necessarily back squat 8 reps or 5 sets or 3 sets or whatever, but still getting them to the volume of the 8 reps. Like you could have them do like 2 or 3 and then they rest 30 seconds, and then 2 or 3 more and then rest 30 seconds. Usually when I do Olympic lifts, I have them just do singles. They're not doing touch and go or anything like that, but just allowing them to like work at higher percentages. I think it builds explosive power and strength. And then also I think one of my athletes, he like plateaued for a long time. So I don't think that he has like a lot of exposure to the higher percentages. So he's been doing that a lot. And I think, his cycle, he PR'd, I think like 40 pounds on his clean that he hadn't done in, I don't know, 2 years or something like that. So yeah, I like to use cluster sets because it allows them to work at these higher percentages. I think a lot of times the beginning athletes, like they just are doing these like 5x3s or 3x3s or something like that. So it allows them to like get more work at those higher reps and minimizing the fatigue as opposed to them just getting blown out by bigger sets.
Yeah, there's a lot of good applications there. You, like you said, with the, like trying to get someone to do 8 back squats, if you do 4.4 and then the next week they're going 6.2 and then the third week they're doing 8s, and you use the cluster set to build their density of the sets is a good way too. But also like you are controlling the volume, right? So trying to get people to do things unbroken. I use cluster sets a lot in gymnastics for the same value as you would with a barbell.
Yeah.
It's to build the density and control the volume and increase someone's ability to express volume in another way. So like clusters are for that. And I think I personally underutilize them, where I should be doing like 3.3.3 to get someone to 9 reps. If there's a workout that's like a 12.9.6 with like a heavy barbell, something, I should be doing like a 4.4.4, 3.3.3, 2.2.2.
Yeah.
So it's like a wave with not a wave, because we're not going to go back through, but it would be like the first set of the wave with a cluster. So now we're integrating 2 styles of training to elicit heavy loading, volume, and a density of sets.
Yeah.
So combining those together, and I don't do that enough. I should when we get closer to competition. That would be beneficial.
I was going to bring up the gymnastics example, but I know at the front end of this, we were like, we're not going to talk about like body weight type stuff, but it is a good way to build out density. A lot of my athletes too are just trying to build gymnastics volume. And so just telling them to do 10, I'm like, well, they can't do 10, right? So it's like, okay, they could do 2s and 3s. So I'm like, okay, do 2s and 3s, and then you're going to rest 20 seconds or whatever. So it still keeps the intensity high, but it allows them to like not go to total failure, gives them a little bit of rest. So they're not in, full fatigue.
We also control, like that's what you're controlling is the rest, right? So like a basic progression for somebody even let's say we're trying to get them to do clean and jerks, 6 unbroken, 3.3, or you're trying to get them to do 6 toe to bar unbroken. It's the same idea, 3.3. The dot can be controlled. And typically I just try to do 10 seconds for everybody because I feel like that's enough time. And as you take that 10 seconds away, they can probably do the 6. Yeah. But like that's where you're controlling. You can get really micro with somebody if you're working on one-on-one and just be like, 3.3. The dot is now 4 seconds this week, whereas last week it was 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And you can really control that rest time to squeeze them into the density. So like, clusters are really good at that. Really good.
And you can really build out clusters in a conditioning, like a mixed setting, to where I know you gave the example of like the 12.9.6, right? But you can build out clusters working on a singular skill to learn how to manage rest. So maybe someone's really good at ring muscle ups. They have a total volume of 30, but they need 30 seconds between sets of 3. Let's just say that. And then it's like, well, let's go for as long as you can, sets of 3 with 20 seconds of rest, just to start building that density that we talked about. But also it's giving them confidence of like, oh no, I know I can repeat 3s on the 20. All right, well, let's try 4s on the 20 or every 20, right? And we can actually like create greater structure in a way that's basically like the programs that take an EMOM and go basically doing a set every 30 seconds. In a way, that's a cluster as well. You're just managing it on the 30 versus
it just looks different.
Yeah.
It just looks different.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Like, that's a very good point. There are ways to write EMOMs, because EMOM's classic in CrossFit and CrossFit program design, that are being pulled from cluster sets, which is a strength and conditioning principle. Again, I think you're going to see a theme here that I keep going back to, because I don't dislike CrossFit. I just think there's not enough credit to what CrossFit has pulled from strength and conditioning areas of strength kinesiology. Like, we're not dummies out here. And sometimes I feel like, not necessarily like when I coach elite athletes, but like, I feel like sometimes people think that like what we're doing is just so like wildly crazy and blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's from strength and conditioning principles that just aren't being explained by the coaches. Cause a lot of the coaches don't know that that's happening.
Correct.
Like a lot of coaches have no clue that Harley said you could do an EMOM 1 rep every 20 seconds for 10 sets. So 20 seconds times 20 is the same thing as me going 1.1.1.1 for 20 reps. Like I wouldn't write it that way because that'd be crazy to do. But like, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing a cluster set.
Yeah.
So it's not new. It's not.
But I think from the strength lens, right, it's more so to get people to do higher percentage work, minimizing the fatigue so that they get more explosive strength, more.
Well, you get more quality reps.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. Right. And like, that's ultimately the goal. Like if you do, like you gave that example of a set of 8 squats at a moderately heavy percentage, maybe their technique starts to break down at their speed starts to slow at rep 3. Their technique starts to break down at rep 6. And then it's like, cool, you got 5 shitty reps of your 8 because 3 of them were slow, and then the last few were just like survival. And it's like by doing clusters, you just then changed it from 5, suboptimal reps to maybe you still had 2 suboptimal reps, but at the same time, you're increasing the number of quality repetitions with speed, with proper mechanics.
Yeah, that's a great underlying tone for like program design when you get coached, is like, you might not know that we're seeing that, right? I might give you 5 squats and then I'm like, like Harley's saying, it's like, the mechanics weren't really good. Let's change it to 6 reps because 2.2.2 is much nicer to see and read. And then I'm going to have you do 2 with a rest, 2 with a rest, 2 with a rest. Now we got 6 quality reps. And over time, we'll try to get the 4 quality reps with another .2, like, or whatever we're trying to do. And that's something that we don't even need to tell you guys, because it would take too long to explain, like, well, you're moving like terribly and blah, blah. And then you're going to get upset and be like, whatever. It's very easy for me to be like, oh, last week those 5 weren't very good. Let's go 2.2.2. And like, you're increasing a lot of the things that we're looking for. And all I did was make a change in the structure using a different method that applies to the approach and the desired outcome that we're looking for. So it's crazy, man.
And sometimes you just need a second chance. Like as an athlete, like maybe that was an off day. So like maybe your coach might run back that same strength piece and be like, hey, try it again, do it better. And if it's suboptimal again, it's not great, then we may make a big pivot or a big adjustment to the density, volume, load, whatever quality we need to adjust. So if you see the same stuff in your program week 2, just be better.
Yeah.
It's coaching cue of the day.
All right, Harley, you got one?
Yeah, mine was more along lines of movement quality and creating balance in the system. I was going to talk a little bit about utilizing bands for what's called RNT, which is neuromuscular and related. So it's reactive neuromuscular training is what the acronym stands for. So you're utilizing a band to change the loading profile of a given movement. An example would be like a split squat. You can put the band just above
joint pressure too.
Yeah, joint pressure. Yeah, if you want to use like a Spanish squat or like a terminal knee extension, those types of things, you can utilize it to manipulate joints. You can utilize it to manipulate leverage and loading profiles for different movements. Generally, are very isolated in nature. So, some examples would be like a split squat. An RNT split squat, you can place the band, attach it to an upright of the rig, and the band can be looped just above the knee. And you can place it to where the band is either pulling the knee inward while you do a split squat. So your goal is to resist the inward pull, create, an ideal knee angle. So neutral over the foot. And that would engage the glutes a little bit more. Or you can set it up opposite where the band's pulling the knee outward. And then you have to stabilize by engaging the adductors, the groin muscles a little bit more to maintain that neutral knee. So you're manipulating the rotational aspect of the hip so that you can develop a more stable knee position. So we all have probably seen someone who either lunges or squats and have their knees cave in excessively and then complain about knee pain because they've been doing hundreds of squatting reps, for each week for the last few weeks leading into the open or something. Okay, great. They do an RNT split squat, pulling to the direction, they need to train for that balance of the hip joint with a nice slow tempo. And they do that either in warm up or as an accessory piece. And it may, help mitigate some joint pain. Is it, without further analysis, you may not be able to find the exact, root of the issue, but it might be an easy way to prime the system, prime the joints to be a little bit more stable, to one, express strength whenever you need it in a squat or a clean, but also to hopefully mitigate future pain or irritation to those joints.
Yep.
Yeah.
And from an athletic standpoint, it gives you tactile feedback that allows you to control your knee, because your knee will go in and out through your hip, like Harley's talking about. But like, it's going to be control of you thinking more about the knee and where the knee is, like hand-eye coordination, like eye-knee coordination. Because if you look at your knee and you're like, I want my knee out, and that's what's going to move the knee, but that's not really what moves the knee. It's the hip, like Harley was talking about. But like in jumping mechanics, in box jump overs, receiving cleans, if you got this soft knee position or they cave in or they're too far out, those could be also applications of the RNT stuff. But generally, like, joint health is very good for that. And the like proprioceptive feedback that allows you to control that position better.
Yeah, because sometimes you just need a little feedback to gain awareness of what's going on too. Right. Yeah. That's why there's tactile cueing in classes. And that's why CrossFit talks about tactile cueing, is just a little poke here and there might be all someone really needs. And that band can do that for you if you don't have someone right there with you giving you that feedback.
And you can create a lot of stability, like you're talking about too, through the knee and the hip of like working those. Cause I think a lot of people will see R&T split squats, or they'll see like pull off presses and other things that it's just like, or like I use a lot of bands for strengthening quote unquote smaller muscles, like they say in the PT world. But more, it's just like trying to figure out like the little weak areas and corners of the joint that are going to cause problems where we're utilizing larger muscles to mask an issue in tinier muscles.
Yeah.
And like I watch people do some of the stuff and I'm like, man, you could be doing this a lot better. But it's because they don't understand really the point of it. They don't understand. It's too easy. They're so strong that like a banded external rotation or a banded Cuban press, they're like, oh, this is chill. Like I could do this with a barbell. It's like, why don't you connect a little bit better to your body and get the feedback, like feel it out? And like you're saying,
to touch on that connection point, I mentioned something called loading profiles earlier. So another example of utilizing a band for an external force and getting more feedback so you can engage a muscle a little bit more effectively. You know, people talk about lat engagement or a lack of lat engagement, you know, as kind of like a buzz topic for some people. So like if you don't have pull-ups, maybe you're just not able to turn on your lats as well. So thinking of like a dumbbell bent over row. So everyone's probably done it in the gym, a hand on the bench, pulling the dumbbell up towards the shoulder or hip. You know, it's a horizontal pull. If you set up that bench pointed towards the upright of the rig and you attach a band to the bottom of the upright of the rig and then loop it around your hand while holding the dumbbell, you then have forward pull from that band that you are now pulling back towards you and towards the hip. That feedback may give you more of a vertical or diagonal loading to that dumbbell rather than just having a plain horizontal pull. And that change of loading angle, just by getting some band tension pulling you in a different direction, may help the person really engage the lat a little bit more effectively for an isolated exercise that, you know, at the surface level in its pure form is relatively horizontal and not as much lat. But by changing that loading profile, you're able to get more awareness of that lat muscle.
Yeah.
So I do have a question on those things because I have my own answer. I just want to hear yours. If you take a person who is relatively strong and apply what people would deem as accessory work, I would not deem that as accessory work because I will break into some other things. But how much stronger do you think they'll get? Is it a bang for their buck?
I don't think of accessory work as an opportunity to get a lot stronger. I think of accessory work as an opportunity to stabilize structure and create balance around joints,
which would express more strength
or prevent injury. Yeah. I look at generally more of a longevity,
so like
lens for athletes.
Calf raises, for example.
Sure.
If you do more calf raises, will it support you jumping higher? Theoretically, yes. Yeah.
If you're loading it and you're overloading that expression of plantar flexion.
Yeah, and you're working some other stuff.
You're working speed, you're working power, you're working overload for that musculature.
The assumption is they're doing power cleans, they're doing squats, and then you're adding R&T split squats. Because I'm trying to hit home the importance, because I think a lot of people overlook this kind of stuff that you're probably giving them and just be like, man, whatever, and just mailing it in and checking the box. But there are people who do like conjugate, other than their major lifts and like their dynamic effort days and stuff. They're doing a lot of this type of stuff. And these are some of the strongest humans in the world.
So think about if their shoulder, like hypothetically, let's just use like a Cuban press because you use that, like a banded Cuban press, right? If their shoulders through rotation are very unstable, but they're asking themselves to bench 700 pounds.
Yep.
And they're doing that weekly, or, they're building up to that over cycle after cycle, year after year. You think that they're going to be able to express strength without injury over time?
No, that's why I led you down the road.
They're going to hurt themselves. So like, there's the whole example of like shooting a cannon from a canoe, right? Like if you have too much force through an unstable environment, you're going to tip over and drown. I'm just kidding. You're not going to drown, but you're going to tip over and you're going to get wet and you're going to be like, well, that was silly.
Good job.
And it's like,
No,
well, yeah,
that's-
well, if your shoulder joint is completely unstable and then you're like trying to max out your split jerk every week, and it's like, well, yeah, you're going to probably have a bad time.
Yep. That was good. That was my favorite. I'm glad you came in with a banger, dude. These guys came in with like actual strength stuff. You're like, all right, I'm gonna hit you with an obscure one that proves a large point about strength.
Well, we talked about movement quality earlier in masters athletes, and I think that drives the point home to our market a little bit more. And I think that a lot of people who, to your point, like look at accessory work and they're like, well, I'm just going to skip this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of it. Like leading into my wedding this fall, and like I was skipping accessory stuff because I was busy doing other stuff. And it's like, I want my meat and potatoes and I got to go get going and do other stuff. Like it happens, but we have to acknowledge what we're leaving on the table there. And it's really about the longevity side of things.
Yeah, it's good. I also just want people to get lazy about it because you're right. Like that's a good analogy, like the meat and potatoes of training. And then there's the other stuff. But like I would argue if you take somebody who is really fit and strong, it doesn't have to be like top level, but like they came CrossFit or they have a one-on-one coach, they train 5 days a week, and then like something in their life happens or they get injured or whatever. Like you can use some of these tactics and protocols to maintain strength and use an opportunity to rebuild some things that may have been a deficit before, that brings them back stronger and better. And I would argue, even if someone doesn't go through a phase like that in their life, but you as the coach are like, hey, look, we gotta fix some things. We gotta do some RNT split squats, and like we're not gonna squat for a while because we need to fix this knee joint, and like your knees are caving in this way or that way, or you're not jumping very, very well. You could use that approach with somebody. And I think people though would be like, this is really boring. This isn't hard. Like it's not heavy enough, whatever. But there's a ton of value in it, like Harley's saying. So that was a good one. A good way to get strong and use expression of strength and get the joint better.
Well, you don't get to get strong if you get broken. So
that's good.
True.
All right. Renata was asking, she joined late. She was asking about doing the push presses in class. No, actually, the max set at the end with a lower percentage is we're getting the 5x5 or the 3x3 that we're doing for the day. And then we're pushing people to maximal efforts, because what they found in research is that most people in group classes and most people that train on their own don't push themselves to a near maximal, and that's where the good stuff is for repetition. So people aren't getting enough volume for themselves to create significant adaptations in muscular structure and bone structure on like a basic recreational exerciser level. Similarly with endurance athletes, people who, do it recreationally don't get enough volume to really express high levels of output. But with our approach and like what we're doing, we're looking for like muscle hypertrophy. You want to look good naked, which is what most people want. So I use that method of let's do the sets, let's build to something heavy. And then we're going to do a max set or drop set to get a lot of volume. So we get neuromuscular efficiency, we get heavy load stimulus, and then we're going to get the volume. And it's almost an RPE style training, because if you got it that day, you might bang out 20 reps at 70% and just get a ton of volume there because you've already done 10 reps prior or 6 reps prior to heavy load. So that's the system there and why we're doing it. I think that's about it. The one thing with CrossFitters I've been doing a lot of is CrossFit specific cluster sets. So 21 rest, 15 rest, 9 rest recently because the Open's coming or other qualifiers are coming. I just think there's a huge value there, especially in strength. And I'm talking about like easy barbell though, 95 to 155 pounds for like men, and then ladies 65 to 125. It's kind of fun. Throwing all the ideas together that you guys have. One of the styles of training, before we go, I'll make it quick because I haven't done it yet. Actually, I'm going to order it. I'm going to do velocity training on the bar for some people, and I'm going to put some people through it because I've been reading a lot. Like Conjugate is big time on moving a bar fast at or faster than 0.8 meters per second. And the reason why they do that is because that's what they found is to be the bar velocity speed that is adequate enough to maintain high levels of strength and what most squats and presses need to move at to achieve maximal loads at any load. So I'm going to use a velocity trainer It's just like a little cable on the bar, and you move it up and down per rep. It's going to show how fast they're moving that bar. And the goal is to move the bar at 0.8 meters per second or faster each rep. And once they can no longer do that, we will stop and then rest and then do it again. And the hope is to make people move faster. So speed aiding them in a greater expression of strength. I will report back. It does work. That's all it is. It's very simple. That's a strength method. Get them to move the bar faster. And I'm going to use this little machine to do so. I was going to get like 4 of them and do it in class and like have a greater lab rat experiment with the GPP people. I don't know. I got to get the okay from the boss. We just spent $11,000 on Rogue equipment for the gym, which when this order comes, it's going to be like, we didn't buy anything. But we got 2 Woodway Rogue runners. So that's where most of the dollars went.
I was going to say, did you buy a runner?
We got 2. We're trying to get it, man. Indoor running. I like the air runners a lot, actually. I've been using those a lot more with people. And I think there's a lot to that. We just got to tell people like Kathleen to move them away from the wall
and stare in the corner.
It's tough.
No, builds character, dude.
Anyways,
she was running facing the wall.
Hell yeah, she was.
But yeah, I want to try that. I think it would take a lot to do it in class, in any class, because you got to get a lot of buy-in. There's a lot of explanation. Then we got to have like the partners in the groups, and they got to be present. Like it's hard enough to get someone to spot somebody in a bench press, let alone be like, yeah, that's 0.7. All right, keep going. All right, that's 0.4. Okay, keep going. Oh, that's 0.8. Oh shit, that one's 0.9. Stop. You know what I mean? Like a member has to do that for the athlete.
Yeah.
You think it's gonna get faster as they go?
No, that's slower. When you go to
okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, 0.9 would be slower than 0.8.
Yeah. Because it's meters per second.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I mean, they might really get enjoyment out of yelling
Arthur.
at each other.
Me. All right, I'll send you the link. You could buy it. We'll work on it. He's already strong as F. When you win the front squat at the CrossFit Games,
are you sure is it seconds per meter? Or is it meters per second?
Meters per second.
Then 0.9 meters would be faster.
I guess so. Maybe I have it wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna get the thing. It's gonna tell me how to
more meters in less time.
We want
in the same time.
More meters in less time.
Yeah,
but isn't
now you're me? I'm gonna look it up.
What?
I'll look it up later.
If it's 0.9 meters over seconds versus 0.3 meters over seconds, so you're getting more meters.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're getting faster as you, in your example.
Yeah, sorry. You're right.
So that's why I got confused. I was like, wait, what?
It'd be interesting to see what that actually looks like in real time.
Yeah, it would be like how fast is 0.8?
Right.
Like that's what I'm curious of.
Yeah, and how fast is like 1 second, 1 meter per second? Like, and how slow is slow? Like visually, if you're watching it.
Correct.
And then play the game. It'd be fun as a coach to be like, okay, what do you think that was? Like you have someone squat, and then you're like, how
really good at eyeing it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The only time I've ever seen it in person was in like 2018. Chris Duffin, he's the guy who owned Kabuki Strength. He just sold out his shares earlier this year. He was like pulling 800 pounds for a deadlift in front of us. And he was like, he had been sick for like 12 days, had the flu or something. So it was his first training session back. And he was like pulling 800 and he looked at his little device. He's like, shit. And he's like mad because it was too slow. He's like, I'm supposed to be pulling this like this fast. And like, I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, but I just remember watching him being mad that he wasn't fast enough. He's like, I was sick for like 12 days. Yeah. He was cool. He's a cool dude. It's impressive to watch people move weight fast and that much weight in general.
Yeah. I mean, the hard thing with doing it with like a class is that not enough of them are experienced enough lifters to have that even matter.
Yeah. They just need to lift weights.
It'd be cool because it'd create awareness and they'd understand what fast is, which would be the learning value. Because then they would apply that logic and thought process to other things and move their barbell faster, which would be great. But actually the training, like what you're talking about, like at the top end of people, because you can't lift a load that's heavy enough to try and push out that speed at a heavy working load, you're not going to improve your maximal speed contraction because you're already so strong. Like, because strength and speed like work together, So like, that's pretty interesting. I'm gonna think more about that. I think it'd be cool to try in a class though.
Yeah, I think that in certain lifts it would be okay. I think very low barrier to entry type movements that are just like low skill in nature would be the place to do it with class. But like if you try to do it with anything otherwise, like
yeah.
And I feel like there has to be a barrier to entry from a qualitative movement like standpoint. Like if someone moves like shit, they shouldn't be worried about speed.
Right.
Like
dude, it's great.
I mean, but CrossFit, like you started talking about movement.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add a caveat though. Like you're correct. Generally, like your thought process should not be about speed, but I would argue some movements, when you apply speed, people's movement mechanics get better. Some movements, not all.
I think that you could do like a trap bar deadlift for most people if you wanted to approach it that way, because it's so simple for most people to get in those positions.
Right. Yeah.
You start talking about someone trying to focus on speed in like a back squat and they can barely squat below parallel, like
well, they're not moving the meters per second. It doesn't matter.
They can't even go a meter.
Yeah, not even moving the right range of motion. We can't have you on this machine.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be motivation for them.
Oh, you want to use the machine? You got
to earn the machine.
Motion.
Earn the machine. All right.
Not much is going to change though if we do that, but it is cool that the technology is pretty cheap now and we can use it. And if you're on site with people, you can. That's the secret sauce. Weird stuff.
It's not secret. You know what the secret sauce is?
A good coach.
Contrast training. Men's Health says.
No, let's not talk about that one. We'll touch on that one. Don't do it. You're not elite enough. I'm sorry.
Dude, fuck. I think I dropped the Men's Health line last night. And I was
like,
I read about Men's Health, but it wasn't about contrast. It was about just like some random stuff. It's like, I don't know CrossFit. I don't know fitness. I just read Men's Health.
I mean, there's some good stuff in there. It's just a poor. It's like reading any article online, realistically, too. It's just poor. You need more education. Like if you're passionate about it, you got to dive deep into it. Like read the one thing and be like, oh, that's really cool. Let me now Google this, because you have a world of information at the tips of your fingers, and like go down a deep dive, watch like 20 videos, then try to teach it to somebody else. And then like, if you're really into it, make a PowerPoint and like really ingrain it into your brain. So you are now an expert at it. And then work.
I said something the other day that was like, information is useless unless you can communicate it.
Right. Mm-hmm. It is.
And no one liked that when I said that. I was like, no.
Yeah, because he said, see, chatbot GPT it is. Dude, that thing is trash. I don't even want to get on. We should talk about AI and how bad it is writing training programs. It's the worst. That's all I need to say. It's bad. It's terrible. It's not there